Nigerians continue to
Tonight,
travel
the
in
city
and
of
out
Lagos
of
There
their
is
went
still a
agog
poor
as all
level of
routes
to you on
Be the first to know.
Core TV News.
From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa, we break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News,
Welcome to Core
a
TV News.
24-hour news station.
It's a beautiful day, and it's good to have you join us on Core Digest this Tuesday morning. And of course, as usual on Core Digest, we take topical issues and try to analyze them as objectively as possible. And today is not going to be different because our topic for today is derivation formula for oil producing state, the unfinished business. Of course, we had delegates at the national conference turn apart on this very topic when the committee actually came with a proposal of making an upward review by 5% of the derivation formula of the South-South, talking about the oil revenue allocation to the South-South, saying from 30% it should be moved to 18%. It did not end there because they also proposed that 5% should be used for the rehabilitation of the northeastern state, and of course another 5% of revenue allocation to start processing minerals in the country so that we do not rely solely on the production of oil, which has over the years brought different reactions in the country, talking about demands from the oil producing states. And we know different things have been argued for and against, like we have the Ijaw Youth Council saying that instead of 18%, we ask for 100%. And if delegates representing these areas cannot demand for 100%, then they should come back home honorably. The question is, if you're demanding 100% revenue allocation or derivation, aren't we talking about resource control already and devolution of power from the center? We have so many of these to discuss, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting time with you and our guests in the studio today. You have the chance to place your comments on Facebook, facebook.com/Core TV News. And in a short while, we'll have a number displayed on screen such that you can call us. But for now, start leaving your comments on Facebook. We have as our guest this morning a comrade. Comrade Abiodun Aremu is the Secretary of Joint Action Front. Good morning.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here with you.
Yeah, thank you very much for honoring our invitation.
Yeah, it's always my pleasure.
It is perceived that Nigeria seemed comfortable and had relative peace before the discovery of oil in this nation. Some felt we had peace, we had people still living comfortably. Now the question on my mind is this oil a blessing or a curse for Nigeria?
Yeah, maybe the way to post it is not whether Nigeria was living peacefully or comfortably before the advent of oil. That may be misplaced somehow. The thing is to try to understand Nigeria itself, you see, and the context in which the oil resources emerge. You see, and how come successive ruling class have dependent, you see, on the exploitations of mineral resources for selfish interests of very few that root society, and not to the benefit of the rest of society. So the context of at what point there was peace, there was comfort, can only be determined when we place that in clear historical perspective. What became Nigeria was a product of exploitations by colonialism, essentially at a point that colonial capitalism was transiting to what you can call imperial capitalism. That's global capitalism. So which you have the today epithet called globalizations and co. Because, for instance, the imperial power required raw materials to propel the Industrial Revolution, you see, as at that point. So, and you now need to locate territory for exploitations. So that's the context of the initial exploitations. And that also explains whatever is the development that people are talking about, because development was not conceived in terms of developing the human capital you have in this part of the world, so that the constructions of rail from the coast to the hinterland, you see, was basically based on exploitations. You see, and that is the pattern. So when you talk of oil, you see, before oil, there was coal. A lot of people did not know that the basis of Nigerian independence was founded on the resistance to exploitation that was going on in the coal industry. Now, coal was a prominent resource, you see, that need to be exploited by the colonial authorities at that point. So, and within that context, even when there were agitation by mine workers in what became known in Nigerian major histories as the Iva Valley Massacre, 21 mine workers were massacred on November 18, 1949. In fact, that was what spurred the agitations, you see, nationwide, led by the then Michael Imodu, Labour leader number 1, and others, that independence now, enough of colonial rule in Nigeria. And that was why by 1950, there was a general conference. Because it's important that we get this background. But people are talking of conference today, you see, and that was what the people call the London Constitutional Conference, where the fate of what becomes Nigeria's at independence has to be determined. And that was what provided the basis for when you talk of regionalization, you see, of Nigeria in 1951. That was, Nigeria was already under what you can call a self-government rule as at 1951 under the African constitutions. And that's where all these issues of derivations, allocations, and some of these things came about. So oil became an issue by 1956. You see, but as at that time, it was not really a major resource that was being exploited, because the various regions that were created depended largely on primary agricultural productions. So you see that context of productions that was on. So when you take that transitions, you see, to when oil now became a dependent resource, because you have abandoned other area of primary productions, you see, which encourage export, which encourage manufacturing. So now to oil. And what show clearly, we look at that pattern, is that increasingly, you see, after independence, you begin to have a ruling class of Nigeria that are not interested in productive activities. So it's like a cheap wet. Because even the oil that we are talking about today, there is no value that is being added to oil. When it is clear that in today's world, you get it, crude oil can be put into over 200 uses. So there's no value that you are adding. You are not even refining the oil. We are dependent on importations of even the fuel refiner that we have to use. So essentially, why the oil became a major issue today, as if to say without oil, Nigeria will not survive. You have America, one of the largest producer of oil, you get it, that has for close to 2 decades, you see, put on the ground most of its oil, but dependent on exploiting, you get it, and determining what happens at the oil level. So the point clearly is that you have a ruling class. You see, you have a class of rulers who are not committed to the development of the country. So, and since crude oil provides a cheap forms of funds, you get it. And that is why if today at the international market, and which is the pattern that is emerging, that oil no longer becomes the bride, you see, that everybody now wants to get. You get it. The economy has to collapse because you are not doing any productive activities. So that is the point that we are that today there's no production, that actual production that is actually going on. There's no value that is being added to anything. And that is the danger where the country lies. Beyond the drama that you are seeing at the National Assembly. So there's no, sorry, at the
National Conference.
Not National Conference. Because what essentially they are discussing, you see, they don't even understand, you see, the context of what the future of Nigeria should be. They are essentially interested in how they use, you see, the plight of the people you see, to garner more resources into their various pockets.
But in talking about developing other aspects of the economy in Nigeria, the conference also brought up the issue of 5% for the development of solid minerals and 5% for rehabilitating the insurgents rocked northeastern part of the country, and an upward review by 5% of the derivation going to the south-south. What's your opinion on these percentages?
Yeah, you see, it's not about percentages. It's first about the philosophies of governance. When you look at the allocations that have been given all over, not just the South-South, allocations to state, who controls those allocations and for what purpose? That is the central issue. Because the central issue at any point in time should be the philosophy of that governance. You can have much money in every state, but how much access has the people in those states to those funds? That is the issue. And that's the questions Nigerians are not raising. And each time people are talking percentage, and the question to ask you is that one. Whether you have 13% derivations, whether those who are not having 13% derivations, you see, how much access has the Nigerian people in Bayelsa, in Lagos, in Kano, in Sokoto to education? How much access are they to health? How much access as to productive engagement that makes sure that you don't have unemployment? You see, that's the central issue. You can give 100% to the South-South. It does not in any way translate, you see, into transforming the life of the individual there, as long as that philosophy of what governance should be is gotten right. Because what you see is that you have people speaking, you see, on behalf of the people, who they are not really representing in terms of the needs of those people. Well, if you are an ordinary man in Bayelsa, or ordinary man in Sokoto, ordinary man in Lagos, in Maiduguri, they have a common goal. One, the goal is that one, they want to access education. Their children must have a future. They want to access better health. They want to access economic opportunity. You see, and that is where the questions of development of the human capital comes about. That is where the discourse should go. Look at all those in the national conference. You get it? In what way have they addressed, you see, the concerns of the people in their various regions? That's the issue. So now, for the past almost 11 months, and also 8 months respectively, the polytechnics and college of education were shut. And you have them across the countries. You see, in what way are the resources of those various places address the futures of those who are there? So when we are talking about resource control, the question must be, it's not resource control, it's not about allocation, not about percentage. Resource control must be how much access has those people. And that is the level, the stake we must raise this to today. Because if you have in the Niger Delta today, you see, refineries that are not working to produce fuel, the agitation should be there should be more refineries, so that there should be more employment opportunities, not the dole, the dash out in names of satisfying the militant. That's not a developmental agenda, you see, of a ruling class that actually is concerned about the people. So I think it's important, you see, that we raise the level of discourse, because resources can be human and material. There are countries without oil. You get, and they're on top of the world today in terms of the Human Development Index. Cuba is an example of a small country, you see, that was not on oil, that its main resource was even sugar cane. You see, and being confronted by economic blockade by Americans for more than 50 years. Then that country is surviving. That country has the highest literacy, this thing in the world, you see, as in terms of medicine and health, is a country that is internationally recognized and respected, even from standard by the World Health Organizations and United Nations. So these are issues. You have countries like Singapore, they are not on oil. So when you talk about resources is not about just what is solid, what is liquid. You see, resources is essentially about the quality of human being you have in every society. Because the quality of human being determines, you see, how you deploy those resources that you have. And this is where the problems we are in the country, because everybody just assume when there is a percentage, there is a money to be distributed.
But Fine. Before we get to the issue of a lack of proper administration and management of public funds, let's get to this issue of percentage, because whether we like it or not, revenues will be allocated to states. And now this is a very hot situation where some people are even threatening the splitting up of the country. And the country concerns every one of us. The question here is, the South-South agitated, and that is why we have the issue of derivation. Matter of fact, during the 1994-1995 Constitutional Conference, that was when we had 13% and there had been no review. If we talk 18% today and renewable in the next 10 years, and we're seeing resource control for each state like the Ijaw youths are asking for, 100%, which do you feel will suit Nigeria as a country?
Yeah, you see, that's why I said it's not necessarily about percentages. And I will tell you, because percentage only makes meaning to what you have. If you add value to the whether mineral resources and human resources that you have, you will then now see how percentage can make less meaning. For instance, today, if there is a sharp drop, you see, in revenue generated from oil by about 50%, you then see how percentage makes lesser meaning. Because what you are going to share is going to be far, far, far less. So the point I'm making essentially is this. You need a developmental agenda, you see, that take us away, you see, from the point that except there is oil, Nigerian cannot progress. You see, their primary, Nigerian can close their eyes on oil today and go into primary agricultural productions that can lead you into manufacturing, that can lead you into industrializations. You see, so Nigerians have still, how much of development have we done on that?
So are we saying we should increase the percentage on solid minerals development and agriculture?
You see, you focus your agenda, because that percent, what does it translate to? That's the thing. That's the problem. What agenda do you have? You see, you must have an agenda before you talk about percentage. You see, if you have a clear agenda now of primary agricultural productions, let's take for instance now, cotton. If in the northern area that is fertile for cotton productions, there is an increased activity, productive activities in cotton production. It's not about taking money from the federal allocation, because what is the money, what are they doing with the money that they have now? What it translates to is this, that one. You can develop an agenda that says 160 million Nigerians will not go naked. And to that extent, you see, you must wear what is produced here in Nigeria. That alone has capacity to create 10 million jobs. Because we are going to have people going to cotton production, cotton spinning, cotton processing. You get it? And the textile industry can flourish again. And you can move from point of manufacturing to developing your technology that can match the standard of any textile productions anywhere in the world. And it makes you now a competitive thing and go. What do you have today? You get it? Nigerian Kaduna textile mill. It was one of the first textile mill in Nigeria, established by the Northern Nigerian government. You see, at that point. So the point I'm making is, see, this over-dependence, you see, on an exploitation of one resource at another level. We make no, because once you increase productive activities, there is a way it lessens tensions on whether people are depending on resource from one part of the country or the other. You know, coal was essentially in the East when it was being exploited. So the point I'm making is this, is that like uranium that is being discovered at large quantity in the northern part of Nigeria, you see, once the oil no longer become a competitive bride, you see that you have more money, and uranium now become, attention is going to be shifted to that. So, and the kind of marginalization, exploitation, dominations that is befalling the people of Niger Delta now will shift focus to that place. That's the point. You see, that you have a ruling class that is focused that wherever any resource that is the highest bidder is to exploit it to the ground. So what is happening in Niger Delta is not a Niger Delta problem. It's basically a Nigerian problem. So I expect even those who are talking about 100% this thing, yeah, let them have 100%. But what becomes of the 100% is the critical issue. That is the challenge of a young mind in terms of thinking in advance. You see, today Niger Delta area should have nothing less than 20 refineries. We should also be exporting oil, refined oil, to other people. That's the challenge of development. You see, that's what people are not talking about. And that's why I say it's not just about the percentage. It is about the critical development. So you see, once there is that kind of development, you see, revenue derivations now make meaning. You can now say you are contributing to the center, you see, from what you have generated.
Talking about contributing to the center, you mentioned you've emphasized the over-dependence on oil, and you mentioned the natural resources we have in other parts of the country. Matter of fact, someone said that almost all the states in Nigeria has one good thing or the other to explore. Are you saying that resource control is going to be the solution if each state is given the power to control its own resources? Do you think that will be a solution in exploiting other resources that Nigeria has as a nation?
Every state has the power already inherent in this present constitution as limited as it is. No state, you get it now, is being denied from setting up a refineries that should work. You have individual Nigerians who have looted resources of the country, establishing refineries outside the country. You see, nothing stops that those who feel are stealing crude, you get it, Uncle, are legalized to form themselves as corporations. They have demonstrated some capacity at a lower level of technology to refine oil. So there's nothing about illegal bunkering or illegal refining. You see, these are things that when you talk of in terms of economy, you see, being centrally controlled by the people. You see, and that's why this present capitalist system cannot guarantee that. It must economy that must free the potentials of the people. Honestly, today, you see, in the socialist management of Nigerian economy, we don't need to import fuel. There are enough capacity today in the South that should be able to refine fuel for domestic uses. It's a question of come. You see, let them assess the crude legitimately. You get it? Set up their refining. Refinery at the lower level of technology is simply the way they refine ogogoro. You get it? It's applying it, you see, to a certain level. So, and people have demonstrated that capacity. It's an area I'm familiar with. The fuel for nobody go and buy, nobody in Niger Delta, go and buy fuel at the filling stations for their generators. You get, that's where I've seen whereby there's a refined fuel that you can use for generator. That are available. They are not from the refineries at that level. So a serious ruling class, you get it, committed
talking about
to
state governments now.
Yeah, that one. I'm saying even at the state level. You see, so these are critical issues. When you have a state that is not focused on developmental agenda, you have a problem. Most of the industries that were established in the past, they have now turned to prayer houses. You see, so no critical development is going on.
But do you feel states will really be encouraged to do all this that you're saying, given the fact that all revenue, majority of the revenue goes to
who stops state
the
from,
center?
Who stops state from agricultural productions? Nigeria is importing rice. You get it now? We're importing rice. What stops a state that has capacity to produce enough rice for every Nigerian to eat? And that state alone can generate 100 billion. Because you don't need now to import rice from Indonesia into Nigeria. So is there a federal law that stops that? There's no federal law that stops that. That's the point that I'm making. You see? Because when you focus on a developmental agenda, you see, these whole issues of one person living on the other, we know this. As a matter of fact, let me tell you, this is charity. Yeah. Honestly, I support those who, whether you want to take your 100% or the other. You see, the fear is that, you see, and that's why I say it's not about the North. You get it? How many of the states in the Southwest? have developed capacity without federal allocations, you see, to stay on their own. It's not taxing people. You tax based on income. You tax based on revenue that accrue to you. You see, when there is nothing to tax, you see, so you must create, you see, a productive activities that engage both, and you cannot, if you are engaged in productive activities, unemployment will be low. Let me give, for instance, an example. You go to ShopRite now. You go to Just Right there. What is the number of workers that are in those places? Maybe maximum 500 workers. Then look at the product they sell in Just Right and ShopRite.
Let's be cautious of mentioning.
No, there's a reason. You see, I'm a labor person. I have a labor background. You have not less than 2,000 products that are sold there. Where are those products from? Majority of them are imported from outside the country. Assuming those things are produced here, what it then means is this. You get it? You have millions of people that are working, that are producing that. What's our state of economy today? Chinese, Indians, Lebanese, all dominating our economy. So Nigeria become the dumping ground. You get it? And then you have unemployment. That's the point I'm making. So you can then have, if you have done that, you can almost have this ShopRite and Just Right in almost every local government. Because there are goods that have been produced, you see, to service that distributive, you see, and shopping complexes. So that's the point. So about productive activities. A nation, a country, a state must define productive engagement. So once you define that, you see, and that's why I said that it's not just about minerals. Primary agricultural production is one area that you can do. You can develop your technology in terms of that. If, for instance, now you have to massify the productions of Gary and some of that thing, what is the essence of why we set up the Polytechnic College of Education? And technology. This is where people can now think. You get it? How do you fry, you see, a larger amount of Gary? You get it? Powering it with a motor equipment. You get it? It's applying those. Those are where you now apply your critical, you see, initiatives, you see, and ideas. That's the point that I'm making, that we need a state, you get it, that must have a developmental agenda. If we look at, and that's why you give it to those who inherited the British flag transferred to us in terms of the first civilian administrations. There was a developmental agenda. First National Development Plan, Second National Development Plan, Third National Development Plan. So some of this infrastructure, even the universities that were set up, were product of development plan. Even then, you have, even as limited as the objective, you have what they call the indigenization decree, which says that foreigners must come and set up their factories here. And that's most of those textile factories you see in those days, you see, were because of that kind of policy. You see? Not that they bring their goods here and turn us into a market. Because the global world, now when you say global village, we are not part of any global village. We are only part of the village where we are being exploited.
You mentioned something about the stance of the Ijaw Youth Council saying they need 100%, and you were like, if that is what they want to support it.
You see, you have created a situation in a country today that everybody now has to be more responsible, hold the state accountable to create a productive environment. What it translates to is that one, we have a state that is no longer working for us. You get it? And what it translates to, which people don't want to, when people say revolution, revolution. Revolution is not just about a spontaneous protest. It's about the present rulers, whether at state, local government, and federal level, can no longer satisfy our aspirations. They're interested in themselves, and the people must see it. Because you have millions of people unemployed. Where do you want them to go? We turn society into a society of criminals. And that's why we're all at the mercy of Boko Haram.
We'll get to that. Thank you very much, Comrade Abiodun Aremu. We'll take a short break. Of course, he's still very much with us. And we're talking about all these resolutions, whether adopted eventually or not, and the submission of it to referendum. Remember that there is no provision for referendum yet in the country as we are today. And the situation where all the deliberations at the National Conference have to go to the National Assembly for another round of debate and vote is another question on our heart. And we have so many people criticizing the stance of most of the northern delegates, threatening for a split up in Nigeria if the 18% upward review is implemented to the South-South. And others have said, okay, why would you give 5% to the rehabilitation of the northeastern part where it is even perceived by some that this insurgency is being sponsored by some stakeholders in that part of the nation? And if these percentages of revenue allocation are being given to these different states, would it not encourage other part of the country to start crisis and unrest so that they can get the attention of being given a percentage of the revenue allocation as it's been generally described as the national cake? Every part of the nation longing to have a portion of their own national cake. We'll take a short break to bring you the news on the hour, after which Core Digest will continue.
You can now watch Core TV News live from anywhere in the world on our website www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to Core TV Primetime News.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click Core TV, leave a space, then News. Core TV News, a 24-hour news station.